Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is TBSkyn, and a while back I did a video talking about character design and same face syndrome and whether it is a useful criticism to level at a piece of design. For some reason, I don't know why, way long after I published the video, all of a sudden it starts getting views, like a lot of views, and people start making comments on it, and I start to squirm a little bit in my seat because that video was really not meant to be popular. It was not meant to be seen by a lot of people. It was a rant. I just wanted to get it out. I didn't put a lot of thought into it. I did not do a very good delivery, and now, just for my own peace of mind, I understand that this video will never get as many views. I understand that it will never get as many comments. I understand that people will not care that much about it, but I have to, just for my own peace of mind, do a better one. So this time around, we have talking points, we have a set of slides already collected and prepared to support the points I'm about to make, and we have cars driving by my window outside, providing a nice ambiance to the whole thing. And let's get into it. The first thing we should do, of course, is to define exactly what same face syndrome is. Now, like the name suggests, it's when a bunch of different characters have similar, or in some cases completely identical faces. The first example a lot of people will go to is anime, where a lot of characters, in this case this group of ladies, all have, let's be real, they have exactly the same face. Exactly, they have the same jawline, they have the same chin, they have the same cheeks, they have the same eyes, they have the same nose, they have the same eyebrows. Everything about them is essentially a copy-paste several times over. And yeah, they are same-faced. But we also have examples like, for instance, let's get that pop out of the way, Disney's Frozen, where we have the Queen of Arendelle up here on the top right, we have Anna on the bottom left, and we have Elsa in the middle. Now, they are related by blood, but what's going on here is not so much characters who, oh, you look so much like your mother, as in you are a literal clone of your mother. They have exactly the same nose, they have exactly the same eyes, they have exactly the same jawline, they have exactly the same hairline. They even have very similar haircuts, but that's perhaps more justifiable. They have the same lips. It's kind of as though Elsa and Anna's father just did not give them any genes whatsoever. They are same-faced. And it also happens on a less obvious scale when you look across the broad swath of a genre of video games. In this case, action-adventure video games of various kinds in the AAA sphere, where characters, they don't look exactly alike, they're not completely identical, but they share a distressing amount of traits across dozens and dozens and dozens of video games across many, many years. Male video game protagonists all seem to kind of keep coming back to the same set of traits over and over again. That is also an expression of same-face syndrome. Now, why does same-face syndrome happen? Why do we have characters, both within a single show and across multiple pieces within a genre, or indeed within an entire industry, who keep having the same expressions and the same features show up over and over and over again? There's a bunch of reasons why, but the first and perhaps the most important one is this. This is a wonderful graph I found on Google which expresses what I want to say very succinctly, in that you can have something for cheap, you can have something in high quality, and you can have something fast, but you can't have all three. You have to make choices. You have to make a calculation between how much money and time and effort are you willing to spend on something, and how much money and time and effort are you willing to take away from something else in order to get it done. And that's something that is at the heart, especially of animation, but in every aspect of creativity. You have to make this calculation every time you do something, every time you have a project. You can sit down for your show, and if you have 50 characters, you can make 50 highly distinct, highly unique, highly interesting character designs, and spend ages and ages and tons of money animating all of them and making them distinct and making them interesting. And then your project takes 12 million years and costs $100 million, and you might not make that much back in return. Or you can just reuse a bunch of features and reuse a bunch of assets and reuse a bunch of things on stuff where you feel like it doesn't really matter so much here. Let's just get this out quickly and cheaper. And it's the same thing with comics. Like, it's a lot easier to draw characters who look similar to each other for 500 panels across 50 pages over and over again than it is to draw a huge range of very distinct and diverse characters in that same time frame. You save time, you save effort by making things similar. And you can see this in various other aspects, especially of animation. For instance, for this shot, the character is running through an environment. Now, you could pay a bunch of background animators and designers to map out a complete environment for the character to run through, and then animate every single little bit and piece of it painstakingly, frame by frame, as the character runs past them. Have it all scrolling in the background and look super realistic. Or you could have one guy do some smears and some speed lines, loop them behind the character while they're running, call it a day, save a couple of $100,000. It's a lot easier. And honestly, does it make that much of a difference if the background is fully rendered versus speed lines? You make that calculation, you choose your battles. Same thing here. Sonic's legs need to move really fast. Now, you could sit down and do 6,000 animation frames of Sonic's legs moving really, really fast. Or you could just sit down and do a figure 8 and put some speed lines on it and call it a day. How important is it that every single frame of Sonic's legs are visible? Not really that important, and it would clash with the style anyway. Another reason why it happens is something that is called the masking effect. And it's a term that was coined by this guy, Scott McCloud, and these are some excerpts from his book called Understanding Comics, where he talked about some of the techniques and the features of comics, how they do what they do, what methods they use to get their point across, why they work the way they work. And the thing he's discussing here is abstraction, essentially, that we don't in comics generally draw a fully rendered human face as though it's a photograph. On some level, we engage in abstraction, and the logical endpoint of a lot of the abstraction we do on faces is essentially the smiley face. We remove features, strip it down to the absolute essentials. And in so doing, we head from the specific to the universal. As expressed here, the photo of this guy can only be this guy. That's the only person that this represents, that's the only person that this is. Whereas the smiley face, as evidenced by our use in text communication, can be used by everyone. Everyone on the planet can go look at a smiley, well, unless they're blind, I suppose, can look at a smiley face and go, oh yeah, that looks like a face. And if it's smiling, then it's a happy face. And if it's sad, then it's a sad face. And I can use that to tell anyone else on Earth that right now I'm feeling happy or sad because this face represents all of us. Can't do that so much with a photo. And as Scott McCloud argues, that universality, that simplicity is part of why characters resonate with people. It's part of why they become popular. Some of the most popular characters in human history are very simple. Charlie Brown, the smiley face, Mickey Mouse censored out for copyright reasons, Bart Simpson, the Ninja Turtles, Bugs Bunny, Felix the Cat, all of them are highly abstracted, simple characters because they are more universal. They are accessible to a wider audience. And the masking effect specifically is when you have a character who is simple, who is stylized, who is abstracted, it becomes easier for you as a reader, as an audience member, to project yourself into them. It becomes easier for you to identify with them. And that's a tool that artists can use in order to make you empathize with the protagonist and make you hate the villains, as he demonstrates with these couple of panels taken from comic by Hayashi and Ushima. I'm not sure what the comic is. I don't think I've ever read it, but as you can see here we have a protagonist character, practically a smiley face. There's very little facial features. There's just the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. Very simple, easy to identify with. But here we have a villain. We have a bad guy, someone who's plotting something evil, doing something evil. And the way we can tell is because everything about them gets turned up to 11. It's almost a realistic face here. Lots of shadows, lots of detail, lots of texture going on. And as Scott McCloud says, characters are drawn more realistically in order to objectify them, to emphasize their otherness from the reader, to put distance between us and them. And that's another reason why same-face syndrome tends to happen, is because a lot of protagonists take advantage of the masking effect. They use the simplicity and the universality of their designs that look so similar to a lot of other designs to help the audience empathize, to help the audience read themselves into the character, to put themselves in the character's shoes. That's part of the reason why it happens. Now, the opposite of that would be this. Cars. This is a picture of a fur merchant from Amsterdam called Niklas de Goits, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Probably not, but it was worth a try. It's a portrait painted by Rembrandt some couple of hundred years ago, I think. And I'd like you to think for a second about what this guy's expression is. What is it? If we were looking at a smiley face, you could tell me instantly. Happy, sad, frowny face, angry face. Easy. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Easy to see, easy to identify ourselves with. But this guy, what's he feeling? Is he upset? He has furrowed brows, right? Is he angry maybe? No, not really. He seems like he's thinking about something. He's contemplating something. He seems a little maybe impatient. And his eyes are kind of baggy and red-rimmed, so he looks maybe a little tired, a little exhausted, but then, like, there's also something else going on. It's like he doesn't seem like someone who would open up emotionally. He doesn't seem like someone who's eager to speak, but he seems like maybe he has something on his mind, right? And this is what Rembrandt does so brilliantly, perhaps better than any other painter, is capture that nuance and complexity and incredible range of possibilities and emotions that can be found in the ambiguity of a human expression. And in so doing, we can't identify with him the same way we can with a smiley face. I can't send that at the end of my text message to express my emotions clearly, because so many things can be read into this expression that it doesn't work that way. It is the opposite of the masking effect. This is a very specific thing versus the highly universal. Scott McCloud argues here, and that's part of the reason, as I say, why very simplistic, very similar looking character designs tend to happen. So now I've talked about what it is, why it happens, and it might be easy to think, well, there's clearly no problem with it. There are perfectly good reasons why it happens, and it serves a useful purpose in communicating design and communicating stories. So what's the problem? Well, there is a problem, and it's a pretty substantial one, actually. Because character design is an opportunity for storytelling. When you create a character, every part of them is at your disposal as a tool to communicate that character, to tell their story, to let us know who they are, to tell the story, the full story that you're intending them to be a part of. Everything is available to you. Everything is at your fingertips. It's a toolbox that you can use. So if you choose not to use a huge part of that toolbox, you weaken your design. It becomes less interesting. And the thing is, you can take advantage of the masking effect without creating boring designs. And some of the people who are the best in the business at doing that are Pixar. All of these characters are very simple. Well, most of them. We'll get to that later, but all of these protagonist characters are very simple. Big eyes, they have noses, they are not super specific in a lot of ways. They are highly universal, but they're still just specific enough that you would never mistake one for the other. They're not just the same character over and over in different cosplays. They are clearly distinct and different from each other, but they're not so distinct and different as to break the masking effect, as we see in this panel here, right? They are not this, but they are distinct, different, interesting, and their character designs tell us a lot about who they are. For instance, Wreck-It Ralph down here. Small forehead tells us maybe not the smartest guy in the world, not stupid, but maybe not the smartest, the sharpest knife in the drawer. But then on the other hand, he also has this big superhero jaw, right? This big, dependable, solid, honest looking face going on. So he's not really villainous, is he? He doesn't look like an evil guy. He He just looks like a big guy. He looks solid, dependable. And he shares that quality with Mr. Incredible down here, who also has that giant superhero jaw thing going on, telling us that this is a solid character, this is a dependable character. Like Superman, that same kind of design going on there. Other end of the coin, evil chef guy from Ratatouille. I forget his name. When you look at this guy, what do you see? Not a hero, right? He's not the good guy, and it's not just his rather disgusted looking expression that tells us so. Everything about him looks just kind of sleazy and evil and nasty. Even without ever watching the movie, you can look at that and a child would go, oh, that's the bad guy. He looks like the bad guy, because the character design has told us so. But on the opposite end of the scale, because the thing you might argue is, well, I don't want people to know they're the villain the moment they come on screen. I don't want people to be able to see the whole story just by looking at the characters. Then why would they even watch the movie? Why would they read the comic if they can just look at the characters and tell everything about everyone? Why would you want to give it all away? Well, you don't have to. As demonstrated by Disney so brilliantly in Frozen, a movie with a lot of other problems, but which did this one thing so well. This is Hans. If you haven't watched Frozen, I'm gonna spoil it for you right now, that this guy is the villain. He is the bad guy. He is the betrayer, as it turns out in the end. But everything about his character design, at least in his face, tells us that he's not, right? Everything about him looks like the Disney prince, the handsome, friendly, smiley, good guy who rides off with the princess into the sunset for the happily ever after at the end of the movie. He looks like the guy who sacrifices himself, who's ready to be heroic for the cause. So when the movie reveals to us that he is actually not that, he's evil, the character design, because of the choices that they made, helps deliver that point to us, that you can't trust something just because it's pretty, which is a big part of the theme of Frozen, is that you can't trust appearances on a lot of things. So even though the character did not tell exactly what was going on inside of himself, the character design is still being used to tell part of the story, right? So there's still a creative decision going on where choices in the character design influences how the story goes. That is when you use your toolbox correctly. And you can do that as well. Like, some people argued in the last video in the comments that part of the reason why the girls of Sword Art Online and a lot of the characters look so similar is because, oh, they're stuck in a video game. They're all just using the default character model from the character creator or whatever. I consider that a bit of a weak excuse for the show, but that's the kind of thing you can do if you make a creative decision, a choice, to use a certain aspect of character design to reinforce some part of how your world works. But like I said, Sword Art Online specifically is an example where I don't really accept that as an excuse at all. It's just, it's lazy, because Sword Art Online is generally lazy. And frankly, most video games do a lot better than this. But still, it's the kind of thing you can do, and when you choose to leave some parts of your toolbox like that, you sacrifice opportunity. You don't do as well as you can. Now, no matter how many good reasons there are why same-face syndrome happened, whether it's budget or time, or whether you're trying to go for the masking effect, if all your characters have similar faces, and they all just kind of look alike for no discernible reason, it is still a point of criticism that you didn't try hard enough, that you didn't do enough with the tools that were at your disposal. Now, I do think that in the same way that you can't really criticize a Nike shoe for being inappropriate footwear for a meeting with the president or for a business occasion, like, it would be kind of meaningless to go, Nike shoes are bad because you can't wear them when you meet the queen. That's a criticism that's kind of not relevant to the situation. Whereas it is entirely relevant to go look at Nike shoes and go, that Nike shoe is really uncomfortable and it makes my foot hurt. That's a strong criticism, but I can't wear it when I meet the queen is a weak criticism. So there are instances, for instance, like this horror of a character design train wreck, where it's like, yeah, you could criticize this anime for having same-face syndrome, but is it a very strong criticism of the anime? Maybe, but I mean, look at this. It's intentional. Like, the designers knew. This isn't just laziness. They were going for this blandness. They wanted it to happen. So maybe same-face criticism in this instance is not super strong, but what if it was something like this? What if you had an anime like Cowboy Bebop, which by the way has excellent character design, also in the faces, I will defend it to death. But if you had an anime like this, where clearly there's a lot of effort going into all other aspects of the character design, they have different physicalities, they have different outfits, they have different anatomies, they are clearly conceived as different. There's a lot of storytelling going on in their character design. Like Jet has the mechanical arm and he's kind of scruffy and the scar and he's kind of the big guy, so he seems like, oh, he's been around a lot, he's experienced. And Faye is clearly a sexual character. Like there's a lot of attention being paid to the character design. But then if an anime like this, where a lot of effort has been put into other things, and then you realize, oh, all the characters have the same faces, or there's only 2 or 3 faces in the entire anime, then same face syndrome becomes a very strong criticism, because then you can point to it and say, you failed here. Like you were trying so hard in all these other places and then you tried to cut a corner where you shouldn't have. Then it's a much stronger criticism. So as a conclusion to this video, yes, same face syndrome is a relevant art criticism and it can be a strong art criticism, but it's not necessarily always the most relevant one. For instance, if you look at a young anime artist on DeviantArt or something, and they're clearly just copying anime that they like or something, going, oh, same face syndrome, that makes you a bad artist, it's not really useful, it's not really relevant, don't do it, it makes you kind of a dick. But if you're looking at a massive video game like League of Legends, that has hundreds of characters, and you realize, oh, all of the women, a lot of them look pretty much the same. In fact, some of them look like they're just the same woman over and over in different costumes. That's a lot stronger. So anyway, that's my take 2 on this subject. It's the video I'm going to be linking people to from now on and getting rid of that old constantly swallowing my spit delivery from the other video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope the cars outside didn't ruin things too much for you. If you liked it, you can like and comment and subscribe and do other YouTube things, and if you didn't, then that's okay, I suppose. I can't force you, I don't control your life. Think for yourself. And I've been TB Skyn, and I will see you next time.